Absolutely. Here's a 500-word story that emotionally explores how to relieve the stress of caring for an aging parent through a relatable, heartfelt narrative. The caregiver's quiet strength. Maya hadn't expected to become her mother's caregiver at 38. She always imagined her mother Lillian, aging gracefully, still going to book club, still baking her famous pecan pie, still laughing at her own jokes. But life had other plans. After her mother's minor stroke and a diagnosis of early-stage dementia, Maya's world began to shift in quiet, irreversible ways. It started with the little things: missed appointments, forgotten birthdays, confusion about the remote control. Then it grew, wandering into the yard at night, calling Maya by the wrong name, moments of panic and anger that didn't feel like her mother at all. Maya moved back into her childhood home, telling herself it was temporary. Just until she's more stable, she had said. But days turned into months, and caregiving began to take over everything: her career, her sleep, her relationships. She loved her mother deeply, but the weight of responsibility became a constant companion. She didn't talk about it much. People said, "You're so strong, and she's lucky to have you." And though Maya smiled and nodded, she felt more like she was unraveling piece by piece. One morning, after a particularly hard night where her mom had cried for hours, confused, frightened, lost, Maya stood at the sink staring into a mug of untouched tea. Her hands trembled, her breath caught. "I can't do this alone," she thought. And that single realization changed everything. She began seeking ways to relieve the pressure, not escape it, but lighten it. The first step? Asking for help. A social worker connected her with a part-time in-home nurse. It felt strange at first, handing over some of her mother's care, but within days, Maya could feel her nervous system exhale. She could take a walk, breathe, think. Next, she built a support circle. She started attending a local caregivers group that met every other Saturday. At first, she was quiet, just listening. But soon, she opened up and found others nodding, understanding. For the first time in months, she didn't feel invisible. She also learned to set small, sacred routines for herself. A 15-minute morning meditation, a warm bath in the evening, journaling every Sunday. These weren't luxuries. They were survival. Maya discovered the power of saying no without guilt. She stopped taking on extra work, declined invitations that drained her, and let go of people who didn't understand what she was going through. And most importantly, she began to see beauty in the little moments. Her mother humming an old lullaby. The way sunlight danced through the kitchen window, the soft warmth of holding hands in silence. Caring for a parent isn't easy. It's layered with grief, love, and exhaustion. But it's also a journey that reveals deep wells of resilience and tenderness. Maya didn't stop being tired, but she stopped being alone in it. And that made all the difference. Of course. Here's an additional 500-word paragraph that continues Maya's story, diving deeper into her emotional transformation and the sustainable balance she begins to build in her caregiving journey. As weeks passed, Maya began to settle into a new rhythm. Not perfect, not always easy, but more manageable. The fear that used to grip her in the quiet hours of the night had lessened. She still had hard days, days when her mother forgot who she was, or refused to eat, or cried for her own long-gone parents. But now, Maya had learned to let those moments pass like waves. She didn't try to fight them anymore. She simply held her mother's hand, whispered gentle reassurances, and reminded herself, this moment doesn't define the journey. One of the most important things Maya learned was the value of boundaries wrapped in love. At first, she felt guilty setting limits, but when she began blocking off time each evening for herself, no caregiving, no obligations, she realized she came back the next morning with more patience, more clarity. Her mother seemed calmer too, as if she could feel the shift in Maya's energy. They began creating new rituals together. Every afternoon at 3, they'd sit by the living room window and sip tea, sometimes talking, sometimes just watching the world go by. Maya would play her mother's favorite old records, and sometimes Lillian would sing along, her voice shaky but full of warmth. It didn't matter that she didn't remember all the words. What mattered was that, in those moments, she was still herself. Maya also found healing in creative expression. She started painting again, a hobby she dropped years ago. It began as a quiet release after long days, but soon her kitchen table was covered with watercolors and sketchbooks. Her mother, intrigued, would sometimes join in with crayons or markers, giggling like a child. Maya discovered that creation brought joy, not just to her, but to her mom too. It reminded them both that life could still offer something new. In connecting with other caregivers, Maya began to understand the power of shared experience. She met people who were navigating the same emotional terrain, and they exchanged stories, strategies, even moments of laughter that felt like lifelines. She no longer felt like a background character in her own life. She was part of a quiet, strong community, a network of people giving all they had and learning how to refill their own cups along the way. Perhaps the most profound lesson Maya learned was this: caring is not the same as sacrificing yourself entirely. Her love for her mother did not demand her exhaustion. It called instead for balance, intention, and grace. She was learning to carry her mother's journey without losing her own. One evening, as she tucked her mother into bed, Lillian looked up at her with clear eyes and whispered, "You're a good daughter." Maya blinked back tears. It wasn't the validation she needed, but it felt like a moment of connection, a glimpse through the fog. And in that quiet, Maya realized that through all the chaos and fatigue, she was building something deeply meaningful: resilient love in its purest form. Of course, here's a 100-word paragraph to gently close out Maya's journey with reflection and hope. Over time, Maya stopped measuring her days by what went wrong and started noticing what went right. A shared smile, a quiet moment of peace. Her mother might not always remember her name, but she felt the love, that Maya was there, fully present. Caregiving hadn't broken her. It had transformed her. It taught her to slow down, to ask for help, to find beauty in the in-between. And while the road ahead was still uncertain, Maya no longer feared it. She had learned how to care without losing herself. And in doing so, she'd found a strength she never knew she had. Let me know if you'd like to turn any part of this into a voice sample.